Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. The Browns didn't score an offensive touchdown, found to get away for a much-needed win against the Houston Texans Sunday. Deshaun Watson looking a little rusty. Let's head into the locker room and listen to Kevin Stefanski as he addresses his team after that win.
Hey, December football, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Formula today. How about 2 defensive touchdowns and a special team? Yes, sir! That's a hell of a job, fellas. And that's what it takes. That's December football, right? Pick each other up. That's what I saw today. I saw people picking each other up, and we were not leaving here without what we came for, and that was that win. You got this one, okay? You went 1-0 this week. Guess what you got to do next week? 1-0. Okay, you got a division game on the road next week at Cincinnati. Back in our division, mindset does not change. We have to work everything we do this week to get ready for Sunday.
Again, Kevin Stefanski yesterday in the locker room after the win, met with the media today. An injury update as well as looking forward to facing those Bengals who beat the Chiefs yesterday in Cincinnati.
Taki has a torn ACL, so he'll miss the remainder of the season, which is obviously very disappointing. Disappointed for Tak. Playing at a really, really high level for us, playing a lot for us. So just disappointed for the young man. Other injury front, David Bell, he's day-to-day. We'll update you later in the week on his thumb. Anthony Schwartz is in the concussion protocol. And then Ronnie Harrison was evaluated for a concussion, but he cleared after the game and again this morning. Yesterday, very, very proud of our football team going on the road, getting a W, which we set out to do. So proud of the effort. Obviously, talking about the defensive scoring twice, special team scoring was outstanding. So team effort, and then we got to look for ways to improve. And we got to do that this week, going on the road versus a division opponent, an opponent we know well, they know us well. So December football in your division, looking forward to the challenge.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph as well as brownzone.com. And Scott, it wasn't pretty on offense. The defense played like you thought they might earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird game, right? All eyes are focused on Deshaun Watson, and he just doesn't play well. I think it's as simple as that. I'm sure the 700 days, which, since his last start had a ton to do with it, but he threw balls into the ground. Felt like he processed things slowly. He didn't see the field like he normally would. I thought even like pressure, the pass rush seemed like that affected him. So, but then the Browns figured out a way against a really bad Houston team, and the way they figured out was, punt return for a touchdown and 2 defensive touchdowns. So just a weird game. But the biggest takeaway is they got to figure out a way to get Deshaun Watson back to himself, or else they're not going to win many games like that.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Deshaun Watson talked yesterday about knocking off the rust and what he's working through on the field.
That's the rule of the game, is just try to improve each and every week. Next week, I definitely need to be better. I will be better. The team will be better. And the goal is to be 1-0. I'm not sure how the outcome of the game is going to be, or what is going to take place, or what the defense is going to do, or different situations of the game. I can't really control that until that play happens. But that's the ultimate of the goal. We get on, celebrate, get on the plane, get back to Cleveland, and once we get back, we have to turn the page and watch the film, fix the mistakes, and then just get ready for Cincinnati.
Tony?
Deshaun, on Thursday you said you didn't know how rusty you would be until you got in this game. So now that it's over, were you surprised you were that rusty, or did you really deep down expect it?
I just say I felt every single one of those 700 days, honestly. I said however long I've been out, I felt every single one of those days. So getting back in shape and everything was definitely needed to feel that today.
And Scott, every time I talked to you, you said, who knows what he's going to be like and I kind of minimized it. I mean, he was really, it looked like he hadn't played in 2 years.
Yeah, it really did. And, I didn't know what to expect. You figured there'd be some rust. I thought the fact that they were playing the Texans would help him. The Texans have a bad defense. I watched him practice, the last 3 weeks, but really last week when he was taking reps with the ones, although we don't get to see team reps, we just see him in individuals, but the ball was flying off his hand, threw with a bunch of zip. It seemed just really natural, his throwing motion, all of it, moved around well. And then he talked to his teammates who were raving about how he looked in team drills, and that gave me a sense that, hey, maybe he's going to play better than I originally thought he would. And then he didn't. And it was back to, this is a tough job, right? Playing football in the NFL, playing quarterback in the NFL is a tough job. Things move quickly, even if you're playing, a bad defense and a bad team. It's just hard, and it takes time to adjust to it. And that was certainly obvious because he just didn't look like the Deshaun Watson of 2020.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Kevin Stefanski talked about Deshaun Watson's play.
Yeah, I think kind of like we talked about yesterday, that was the first one and the first one in a long time. So we knew that there was going to be a little bit of playing through that. And I think he gets that. He'll get more comfortable with the more game reps that he gets. And I think all those things that you look at offensively, all the things that you look at with Deshaun, they're all correctable.
And obviously they are. The thing that was really kind of surprising, he wasn't as accurate as he normally is. He's normally really accurate. He threw some balls at guys' feet. My question to you, Scott, do you think it just kind of clicks in all at once, or is it a gradual thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of asked Kevin Stefanski that. Like, can you expect it to be, week 1 to week 2, with the kind of assumption that if it's not, then it's going to be this gradual progression. And I don't know that answer. Harrison Bryant, the tight end, thought that there's a good chance that there could be a big jump from week 1 to week 2. You shake off that rust, you get used to the speed of things. But I'm just not comfortable saying that given how much Watson struggled, right? Like if he had played okay, it'd be, kind of played so-so, okay, he's ready to take off. But he was bad. You mentioned the accuracy, which, he entered the game as like the all-time leader in completion percentage for guys with 1,500 throws, and just didn't look good. So, I think there's a chance that there's a big jump, but I feel like it's probably going to be more of a progression through the end of this year, and then maybe hits the ground running at the start of next year, which, is not what Browns fans want to hear if they're hoping that the Browns go on a run here and make the playoffs. But I think that's realistic, and then I think what they need to do then is figure out a way to win without Watson at his best, and that's going to be hard to do against a really talented Cincinnati team.
Yeah, without question. And, the other thing is he's in Kevin Stefanski's offense at game speed for the first time. So that's probably because normally, you watch him in the Texans and his processing's very fast. It's like, okay, he knows that, and that just wasn't there either. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Happy the Browns won. Very dismayed in terms of the performance of Anthony Schwartz. Check out Ronaldo Nehemiah. He played for the 49ers in the 80s. Bill Walsh gave up on him after 3 years, which is what they should do in Cleveland. And the next, I believe they drafted some unknown named Jerry Rice. Very disappointed in Deshaun's performance. I don't see him leading the team to the playoffs. It's going to take him games, many games to get back to what he used to be. The offensive line doesn't look good either. So I'm thinking not many wins coming up in the next 5 games. Thanks for everything. Great show. Take care.
Well, that's not exactly all roses there, but we always appreciate the voicemails. Yeah, Anthony Schwartz, the fumble and in the concussion protocol. It's kind of an uneven thing. I don't think you're ready to give up on him yet, but you need to see a pretty significant jump as you move forward into next training camp, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think it's interesting. And obviously, he had a big fumble, and then he kind of got benched after that. They went with Demetric Felton when David Bell got hurt, and you didn't see a whole lot of Schwartz on offense after that fumble. But, the week before, he had one of his better performances. He had the long touchdown run on the reverse. He caught a 17-yard pass. People were kind of feeling good about him, and all of a sudden he has one real bad play and gets a concussion. And, people revert to the opinion of him before the week before. So he's got a long way to go. There is speed there. We've seen glimpses, finally. But you need to see more consistency. And, there's probably not a whole lot of time this year to see it. But, so, yeah, you're right. He needs to take a big jump. I just think it's interesting how fans, and the caller's not the only one, but how people view Anthony Schwartz.
Well, yeah, and I think part of it is because it was a third-round pick and you expect more than you have seen so far. But, yeah, it's very Yeah, we love that. Or, man, there's no in between with him. Yeah, I'm with you. Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to turn our attention to the defense and special teams, two areas that excelled against the Texans. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. Let's just take a minute to give props and congratulations to the defensive special teams. Last week versus the Bucks, and now this week against the Texans, they came to play. I don't care how bad the other team is, it is tough to cause 4 turnovers versus any team in the NFL. And DPJ, with a punt return touchdown, finally broke one loose. That's a sign of a good team when your offense doesn't play well but still put up 27 points because of your defensive special teams. That's the very definition of complimentary football. Obviously, the big talking point will be Watson's rustiness, and there was a lot of it. But I'm fine because he hasn't played in almost 2 years, so hopefully he got the jitters out, and next week versus Bengals, he comes ready to play. All that matters is that we went 1-0, and now it's on to the Bengals. Go Browns.
All right, as always, appreciate all of the voicemails. And Scott, up to 5-7. If you can find a way to win the next 2, you're back to 500.
Yeah, and that's, in my mind, that's the toughest part of the schedule left is the next 2 games. At Cincinnati, home against Baltimore, and that's on that Saturday afternoon. And then it's New Orleans on Christmas Eve, at Washington, at Pittsburgh. You can figure out a way to talk yourself into the Browns making a run if they win at Cincinnati. To me, that's what this season's going to boil down to, which is why there's such a sense of urgency with Deshaun Watson needing to play better, is because this Cincinnati game means everything.
Yeah, I cannot argue with that. Well, the Browns finally got turnovers, and as we have said a couple of times, they came in bunches. Kevin Stefanski talked about the importance of turnovers.
To go get 4 takeaways, to score twice on defense, obviously to score on special teams, to take the ball away on special teams. Those are the type of things that you're always looking to do, and that those help you win ball games. And as you know, they seem to come in bunches. So we're always looking for multiple games where we can get multiple takeaways, because it really changes the complexion of these games.
And Scott, to kind of illustrate that, let's take a look at this. This is the bottom 5 in takeaways. Panthers are -4, so they've given it away 4 more times. Browns are -5. They just went ahead of the Texans. Keep in mind, they were +4 last week. The Rams, what kind of season they're having, the Saints and the Colts. The top 2 at +13 are the Eagles and the Cowboys at +8. So, again, if you are plus in the giveaway takeaway, you're usually near the top of the standings.
You are. I mean, a lot goes into that, right? I think talent leads to takeaways and turnovers, and not committing turnovers. There's some luck that's involved. If you're winning big, then you get pass rush and strip sacks and stuff like that. But it is a telling stat, and it just changes how a game plays out. Certainly, you don't have to look any further than yesterday's game. If the Browns don't get those touchdowns off the turnovers, and even if you throw in the punt return, then it's a really low-scoring game where it might come down to the 4th quarter and you need somebody to make a play, but your defense can robs the other team of possession and gives you an extra possession, and that means so much in this league.
So CBS Sports with its grades each week. So the Week 13 grade for the Browns against the Texans is a B. Browns defense phenomenal, forcing season-high 4 turnovers, including fumble return, interception return for touchdown, special teams with the Donovan Peoples-Jones punt return, Cade York. Running back Nick Chubb had only 80 yards against the NFL's worst run defense. Being able to beat a team with outscoring an offensive touchdown is impressive. Cleveland lucked out playing the worst team in the NFL this week. I mean, you could say the Browns were due for some luck, but it's tough to argue. The offense didn't look great.
No, it didn't. And I think it is tough to judge that whole performance given the opposition, right? Houston's bad. And they had Allen playing quarterback, and it was only his second start in like the last 2 years. And he didn't look comfortable. He missed a bunch of throws, had the fumble on the goal line, the interception, pick six. So even like defensively, you look and go, okay, well, I mean, the defense played well, but look who it was going up against, right? So I think that's what makes this win tough to really judge. I mean, obviously a win's huge. They needed it. They got it. But I just don't know how much to read into it, I guess, all the way around, really, except that Watson in the offense should have played better because Houston's defense isn't very good either.
Well, it's fortunate that you were playing the Texans in Watson's debut. You wouldn't want that kind of quarterback play against the Bengals coming up, and hopefully we don't get it. I know you've written about this. How impressed have you been with the way Myles Garrett has played this year?
Yeah, I can't say it enough, Dave. In that game against, yesterday he didn't have any sacks, but he still showed up. I think he drew a holding call early that wiped out a first down. He's always doing something, always in the backfield, made some run tackles. A play on the goal line, he made a tackle on the goal line before the fourth down breakup by Grant Delpit. So, but then you flash back the week before and, against that Tampa Bay win, and, his arm's like hanging off that left shoulder. He takes the direct shot, doesn't miss a snap, comes back and dominates the last all of overtime and the end of regulation. Second half, draws a penalty, pressures on third downs. I know we've talked about it. I know he takes a lot of grief, and I kind of understand it. I really don't understand it, and I just think he's playing at a really high level in some tough circumstances. Not only is he injured, right? He's double-teamed constantly, the most in the league, and he's got the highest pass rush win rate in the league, according to the ESPN stats. You throw those together, and I just don't know how you get mad at him for not dominating every game.
Yeah, and the flip side of it is you got to get him. Clowney is nice. That helps him. You got to get some interior guys that at least are a threat. I mean, right now, and the interior guys, the D tackles, are playing better, but you still don't have anybody that you can say, man, if he gets loose, we're worried about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jordan Elliott gets double-teamed like almost one of the fewest times in the league. So you're not drawing the attention of, the other guys on defense aren't really drawing that attention. You're right. Clowney does a little bit when he's in there. He hasn't been healthy until lately. And then it's circumstances, too. You need to be games and then unleash him to go get the quarterback, right? That's how pass rushers pad their stats. That's how they look dominant, is they take over in the fourth quarter when, they're trying to protect the lead. And the Browns just haven't been in that situation enough for Garrett to really excel.
Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, can Deshaun Watson knock the rust off in time to make a playoff run? That's the big question. We'll hear what one of the national pundits thinks. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as brownzone.com. So Keyshawn Johnson on KJM ESPN talking, does he think Deshaun Watson can knock the rust off soon enough this year for the Browns to make a playoff run?
I don't know that there's enough time. I think he can get back eventually. I just don't. I mean, he struggled. And what did you expect for him to do? He wasn't going to come out there and hit on all cylinders. The guy hadn't played football in almost 2 seasons, a full 2 seasons. So you're going to see what you saw for the next couple games. Maybe at time things will get a little better and a little better and a little better, but they may run out of time before long.
Yeah, I think what Cleveland showed the other day is that they it still makes me wonder like what this team could be when he does get back to form, right? Considering what their defense was able to do. Granted, it was against the Texans, but like these games can sneak up on a lot of teams, even though they're 1-10. I still like the upside here, but it looked rusty, obviously. The timing for any sport, timing is everything, right? And you see a lot of passes at the feet, the timing of play action, a lot of that stuff seemed off.
And Scott, it's kind of interesting. Keyshawn played in the NFL. He would know probably better than you and I would. Will it all of a sudden click in, or is it a gradual? Sure sounds like he expects it to be a gradual thing.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then they really have to figure out a way to score points next week in Cincinnati, right? That's where it starts. And, I don't know if that means maybe you just run Deshaun Watson more. You say, okay, if he's not comfortable in the offense passing the ball yet, what else did he do well? Well, that's he can really run. So get him outside the pocket. Maybe that's the other element, and then it helps Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt if you have that quarterback run threat, which you've seen with guys like Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson. Maybe that's how you kind of bridge that gap and find a way, like Kevin Stefanski says. All that matters is finding a way. But you have to be better overall on offense, right? Even if he doesn't throw it that much better, how can you figure out a way to score points? And I don't think it's as simple as handing off to Chubb 25 times, because Cincinnati's going to be looking for that. So maybe it's the quarterback run game that kind of bridges that gap, like I said.
Yeah, you got to find 2 or 3 things that he feels really comfortable doing and then find a way to play off of them. Watson talked about being the target of boos pretty much wherever he goes, and he knows that's going to be part of the game now.
That's not even my main focus. My main focus is really just doing my job at executing and just trying to play each and every snap. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of people that were showing support, but I didn't really focus on the negative things. I was focusing on try to execute as much as I can.
Right here.
Sean, you mentioned they're supposed to boo their opponent, but I can't imagine you've ever been booed every time you've taken a snap for an entire half of football. So what did that feel like?
I definitely have. South Carolina in college. A couple games here in Houston when we went on the road to Tennessee and Indy. Like I said, it is what it is. I can't control what the fans do and what their, how they approach whenever I step on the field. My job is to go out there and execute and do my best as I can for the team.
And Scott, I don't think the booing bothered him. He's used to it. You know what I mean? The quarterback gets booed. I think it's just more of what you said. It's 700 days without having guys around you when you're trying to throw and a new offense.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, Dave, but I don't know if we should just dismiss the fact that there could be an emotional or psychological element to this and not just getting booed. He's not getting booed like any other player, right? They boo Nick Chubb, or they could because he's on the other team. Deshaun Watson is getting booed because of the sexual misconduct allegations and accusations. That's one of the reasons he's going to get booed, or that's the main reason he's going to get booed wherever he goes on the road in the NFL. So he does carry that with him. Whatever stigma comes with that, not only the time away, but the stigma, how people look at you. We know he's been in counseling and continues to be in counseling. So, I do think there's a personal, psychological, emotional factor into this. Now, he won't talk about it, so I can't tell you how he's processing that or not. Harrison Bryant said he was calm in the huddle, so it didn't seem like he was nervous to be out there. But I don't think it's crazy to think that there's a lot going on in his head right now.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair, without question. Kevin Stefanski talked about the run game and the run game with Deshaun Watson.
Again, I think that's something, Cam, that will come over the course of time. You can't get every play in one game, but I think there were some really, really good moments for the run game there. I thought we ran it effectively throughout the game. Got Nick and Kareem that ran very, very hard. I thought Deshaun added some nice elements to it as well. So always are going to look to build on that.
And Scott, do you think it's too much of a stretch to think that they held a little back for the Ravens and the Bengals? And again, any NFL team's capable of beating any other NFL team, but I kind of want to believe you don't want to show what you think can be the most explosive part of the offense with Deshaun Watson in it against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I do think they held some things back, especially once the game got going and you felt like, or I think the Browns felt like Houston wasn't going to be able to score on them, or at least score a bunch on them, that you could play conservative. I mean, I think I only saw Watson throw the ball deep one time, and it was late in the game. He threw kind of a go route to Cooper down the right side in the end zone, and Cooper didn't even finish the route. Like, he stopped. There was a miscommunication. That's the only time I really remember them trying to stretch the defense. And maybe that takes more timing to hit on those deep routes, but I could see them show up in Cincinnati, and we see more quarterback runs and a couple of deep shots and think, hey, maybe this is how we can score enough points, right? This is the couple of things we can do really well that match up against Cincinnati.
Yeah, and again, I agree with you. You're not going to see the whole playbook, but you got to figure out 2 or 3 things that when you're in a bind and you need points, you can go to get points with Deshaun Watson.
Well, and you've talked about the tight ends a lot, right? We didn't have Njoku wasn't out there. If he's back against Cincinnati, maybe that opens that up.
Yeah, and that's one of the strengths of Watson, or at least it was in Houston. All right, Pro Football Focus, highest graded Browns in Week 13. Top rated, Joel Bitonio, 86.1. How about Tony Fields, linebacker, comes in at number 2, 81.6. Greg Newsome back in the lineup third. Right, showing up at number 4, Chubb, and Farrell Brown tied for 5th. Again, Bitonio, you kind of expect that. He always grades out pretty high. What about Tony Fields? A guy stepping in, and they're going to need him with Taki being down.
Yeah, I could certainly see his role expanding. I mean, right now he's been only in the base package when they go 3 linebackers, and that's only after not playing hardly at all throughout the first, 9-10 games of the season. But then, he had a breakthrough game yesterday. Now, who knows if that's sustainable, but he had a forced fumble. He had the pick 6. He recovered a fumble on punt. He's made a couple plays in the weeks leading up to this where at least you notice him. And again, it's kind of like an Anthony Schwartz thing, although, Fields wasn't as high a draft pick. I think he was a 5th-round guy. But, you almost give up on him. And, I know I've watched him and said, I'm just not impressed. He's not the biggest guy. He looks kind of like a safety. He's missed a bunch of time with injuries and illness last year. And you think, it's kind of a wasted pick. But then when he gets time, he made something of it. So I think it's definitely worth taking another look at. Now, I'm not ready to say, he's going to turn into a guy that gets a lot of playing time over the next 3 years. But for now, he's a guy that's going to play, and at least he's doing something with that playing time.
Yeah, without question. All right, now let me throw this out at you. It's a little off the beaten path. So the last 2 Super Bowls were won by Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, guys that came to teams in their first year. When we look at the quarterbacks that changed, the big quarterbacks that changed teams this year, Russell Wilson in Denver, thank goodness he didn't want to get traded to the Browns the way he's playing. Matt Ryan to the Colts, and then we saw Deshaun Watson in his debut. It's not always seamless. Is that just kind of the way football is? Because you can't just throw a guy into a system and say, "Yep, go get him."
Yeah, I think part of it's the complexities of the NFL game for sure. I think part of it, you look at Tom Brady and go, well, yeah, he's the greatest of all time. It's not a surprise he goes somewhere new and wins a Super Bowl. Matt Stafford went into a really good team with a really good coach and played well. But he's a veteran guy, been around a long time. So I think there's kind of probably extenuating circumstances with those guys. But it is a surprise that Russell Wilson's played as poorly as he has, right? I'm surprised that the Colts have been the disaster that they are. And Matt Ryan's part of that. He's not all of it. He's part of it. You could throw Baker Mayfield in there to a lesser degree. Goes to Carolina and gets, benched pretty quickly. And then Watson's his own entity, right? The fact that he missed 11 games, I don't know what you could have expected. But it's probably some kind of a cautionary tale that you can't just go find a quarterback and he's necessarily going to change things. But I think still, if you find the right one, he will change things.
Yeah, and again, I'm in no way saying anything on Deshaun Watson other than the jury is still out at how he fits into Kevin Stefanski's system. I think it's going to be really good. Game one was not what you would hope for.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I agree with you. I think it sets up well. Now, my assumption is he's going to return to pre-2020 play, right? His performance will return to that. And then he's a really, really good quarterback, top 5, 7, 10, whatever that number is. But I guess, it is fair to say we need to see it. We need to see it post everything he's been through and with the Browns in Kevin Stefanski's system before you feel 100% comfortable.
Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the Bengals. Browns getting ready for one they got to have. If they can get that, they're within one game of 500. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph as well as brownzone.com. Joe Burrow and the Bengals beat the Chiefs yesterday, so Joe Burrow has now beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times. The flip side of that, though, is Joe Burrow has not beaten the Browns, who they're getting ready to play Sunday. Hasn't beat them yet. That concerns at least one Bengals fan.
Mom, I don't want to lose to the Browns. Joe Burrow's never beaten the Browns, and they're historically the worst franchise in NFL history. I mean, my god dang hero can't beat the Browns, Mom.
And Scott, that was a Bengals fan who was getting her wisdom teeth pulled, and she was coming out of the room there. So, is Burrow due against the Browns? I mean, is that what we're down to? I mean, he's a really good quarterback who just hasn't been able to beat him yet.
Yeah, I think he is, but I thought so before the Monday night game too, right? I thought maybe he was due, and then the Browns played really well. Now, he didn't have Jamar Chase, right? It was at Cleveland and not at Cincinnati. Those things are a factor. I think the Bengals offensive line looks like it's gotten better since that Halloween matchup. But yeah, I think there's certainly an element of he's due, and he's just too good for the Browns to never lose to Joe Burrow. Having said that, I do think there's something to the fact that the Browns, it's just a good matchup for the Browns. For whatever reason, they got a good secondary. They're able to get some pass rush against him. The Bengals don't do a lot of motion and tricky stuff that seems to fool the Browns defense. So, yeah, I mean, he's due, but it's not like, I guess I'm not ready to say, yeah, it's automatic that the Bengals win, because I get it's like when the Browns lose a bunch of games in a row. The Cincinnati needs to prove, and Joe Burrow needs to prove that he beats the Browns before I think it's automatic.
That's fair enough. All right, Kevin Stefanski talked about the familiarity that the Browns have with the Bengals and the Ravens, and is that one of the reasons that they seem to play well against those two teams?
I don't know. I don't know, Tony. I think it's a good question. Specifically to Cincinnati, I mean, there's familiarity on both sides, really. So they know how we play offensively, defensively, special teams. Obviously, we know the same. So it's a great matchup. They're really, really well coached. They have great players. So we got to make sure we put a plan together this week, and then we got to go play.
And Scott, I think one of the things, just in thinking about it with the Bengals, not many teams have the cornerbacks and the depth at cornerback that the Browns have to be able to cover the guys that are their receivers.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Huge in that matchup. I really do. You can go three. The Browns can go three corners because the Bengals go a ton of three wide. So you have to have that third corner out there. And Martin Emerson Jr. has played really well. Then you have, Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. Newsome in the slot's a big-time player in the slot. Got a couple of guys who can get after the quarterback, and Garrett and Clowney. The Bengals usually don't run it a ton, which is a Browns' weakness. But I do think there is a lot to be said for the familiarity thing, because it's not only the Bengals. It's the Ravens, too. And the Ravens usually are a tough offense to defend with Lamar Jackson and everything he can do. But it feels like Joe Woods has figured something out against both these teams the last couple of years. And actually, after they played the Bengals on Halloween, I was asking Woods and some defensive guys about that. And they do think that's a big part of it, is they play much better against teams that they know than against teams that they don't see every year.
Yeah, that's fair. So the Browns lost Sione Takitaki out for the year, ACL. We heard from that from Kevin Stefanski earlier. So now it's the third starting linebacker. If you count Tony Fields, Anthony Walker. How concerned? I mean, you're getting even deeper into that linebacking core. How concerned are you about the linebackers, given what's ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it for the Browns is very concerning. Takitaki, whether he's playing middle or strong side, had played well and had shown up, and I think was a big part of the reason the run defense has played better the last few weeks. And it's him being in the middle. He's a good communicator. Guys really like him. He's physical, plays hard. So, yeah, that on top of Anthony Walker Jr. being out for the year, Jacob Phillips being out for the year. I would say the silver lining is, they traded for Deion Jones, who has a Pro Bowl on his resume. He's played a bunch of snaps. He was in a Super Bowl. I think he played 100 snaps in that overtime Super Bowl loss the Falcons had to the Patriots. And he can step in and play middle. Like, the worry is that Takitaki replaced him because they didn't think Jones was playing well enough. But at least you have a guy with experience that can step in to that role. And then Stefanski also mentioned Jordan Kunasich, who's played in the league before, has played a little bit in the middle recently as a couple of guys. So maybe they split it. So at least you have some depth. But anytime you're down three of your top guys, there's going to be a drop-off.
Yeah, without question. We alluded to this earlier in the show. So Week 15, the game against the Ravens has been officially announced as a 4:30 kickoff at First Energy Stadium. So it is Saturday, and it is 4:30. Again, that's, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but the Browns, they have to win out. I can't imagine, with where they sit in the standings and all the tiebreakers they don't have, they got to get to 10, and the only way they get to 10 is winning out.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that game becomes way bigger if the Browns win in Cincinnati, right? Then there's a chance, and you think, okay, get to 7-7. It would be 4 in a row if they beat the Ravens. They would beat back-to-back division opponents. They'd have a really good record inside the division. They'd still have the Steelers left. That game gets huge if they win in Cincinnati. If not, then it becomes a Saturday game that's way more important for the Ravens, and the Browns would almost be in a spoiler role. So, the NFL waited about as long as it could to announce that. I know people having weddings that day that were really eager to find out when that game was going to be. So I'm glad we know when it's finally going to be.
All right. Before we go to break and before I let you go, news out of Carolina. The Panthers have released Baker Mayfield. And Dan Lobby, little play on words. Carolina expected to let Baker Mayfield off the leash today. And you've gotten some crazy stuff, but apparently he was told he was going to be third behind P.J. Walker and Sam Darnold. Went to the Panthers, asked for his release, and they granted it.
Yeah, and I do think that the at least, some people have said this, NFL Network, that the 49ers, the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo played into this as well, that maybe Baker feels like he can land in San Francisco and have a shot to, if not move into the starting lineup, at least be on a team that might need a quarterback. I know he asked for his release to be waived, but it's still a pretty big fall, right? He goes to Carolina, he starts week 1, he's out of the lineup by like week 6, and then he's third on the depth chart and asked for, to be waived at the beginning of December. I'm sure that that's not how Baker envisioned 2022 going for him. And, it's less than 2 years since he went to Pittsburgh and won that playoff game. And it would really have been unfathomable to think then that Baker would be on the waiver wire less than 2 years later.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Everybody, after that game, everybody thought the Browns had found their quarterback. So I would agree. Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out, Elyria Chronicle Telegraph, as well as BrownsZone.com. Really good Browns stuff, as always. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, will join us. We'll talk a little Browns, and we'll talk a little Buckeyes. They're in the college football playoff. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports 4 CLE. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah talked about the defense and what they expect to see from the Bengals and how this team matches up with Cincinnati.
When teams look at our film, they believe that our weak point is the run game. And the Texans did have a good run game, if you ask me. A really nice running back, a really nice scheme, actually, to their run game. And the Bengals also do have a run game, believe it or not. Nixon is a pretty, similar running back as 3-1. So we'll see a lot of, not different looks, but, the Texans threw more eye candy at us. The Bengals are more of a, what I'm doing, now stop me type of team. So they're not going to try to, be too difficult with, trying to fool you here and fool you there. But they are a team that is very prideful in what they do. Burrow is very prideful in what they do, what he does. So, we'll be looking to see what comes out of it.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. And Tim, Browns defense has to find a way to stop if it is Joe Mixon. He didn't play yesterday. It was Pirine, and he ran just fine. They beat the Chiefs. that run game, they can't let that get rolling.
Especially now when you consider the weapons that Joe Burrow has at receiver. I mean, Jamar Chase came back yesterday, against the Chiefs. He looked like Jamar Chase. And, that's always a problem in your face of the Bengals because, they have those quality receivers out there for Joe Burrow. He seems like he's kind of been on a heater, especially since what the Browns did on Halloween. But you're right. Joe Mixon obviously is a difference maker because, he's just so explosive with the ball in his hands, and again, in the run game and in the pass game. So the Browns got to know, among many things, where 25 is at any given moment. But I thought it was interesting what Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah said about that Bengals offense. It seems like they're more about executing and kind of beating you man on man, more as trying to fool you with certain things. And they have the talent to get away with that because, again, of those elite receivers and having one of the top 5 quarterbacks in all of football. So it's going to be interesting to see, if the Browns can kind of keep up the streak of containing Joe Burrow and defeating him.
Yeah. And again, I think one of the keys is going to be, can they get some turnovers? They've had some success doing that. So this is from ESPN. Big questions from every game. And when they look at the Browns, what they come to is, can the defense and special teams keep up the playmaking? And you know what? That's a huge question. Donovan Peoples-Jones broke the long touchdown, had a couple of returns in the previous game against the Bucs that were pretty good too. So maybe they have finally found at least a stopgap answer in the return game, the punt return game, to help with field position.
Yeah, and of course, remember that was supposed to be Jakeem Grant, and obviously he got injured in training camp. We never got to see what that looked like, but it's good for the Browns and Mike Prefer in that special teams unit that Donovan Peoples-Jones has been able to step in as the punt returner. He obviously has looked much better that the last 2 games at that position than really any other time as the punt returner. So that's a great sign for the Browns, and a better sign for Donovan Peoples-Jones that he has more ways to contribute as going forward in addition to being the number 2 receiver. But it's still too early to say if the defense has turned the corner because, you look at the last 2 teams they played, the Buccaneers, they ran the ball incredibly well in the first drive, and then really they had nothing after that. And Tom Brady did not look like Tom Brady that, everybody knows and everybody fears for good reason the past 20-plus years. He didn't get that. And then against Houston yesterday, you're looking at a Texans team that could give the 2016 and 17 Browns kind of a run for their money as far as, not having elite talent, not playing well, making, crucial mistakes at crucial times and those sorts of things. So it's not necessarily offenses that are going to light the world on fire. And if they go and, have great games these next 2 weeks against the Bengals and Ravens, then maybe you can start to believe that the defense has turned a corner.
All right. Obviously, one of the things that everybody noticed is Deshaun Watson didn't play well in his first game back in nearly 2 years. Watson talked about being rusty and knowing it's got to get better.
I'm going to say I was jittery. It was just most of just getting out there and just being able to play. Just, live bullets are coming at you, for the past however long, since I've been back on the practice field, guys are coming towards me, but they're not allowed to hit me. This is the first time in live action other than the preseason game, which was 8 plays, I think, where, guys was coming at me full speed and try to, get the ball from me. So, like I said, it's just knocking out just the rust and getting the timing down with the receivers in the offense and knowing who, is blocking for me up front and how they block and where they're going to set in different situations. So it was our first time for, live action, but it was good to feel it.
And again, Tim, they got to figure that out pretty quickly. They got to figure out at least 3 or 4 things they can do well.
Yeah, we saw yesterday, he looked like a guy who hadn't played in 2 years because he hasn't played in 2 years. And, it comes down to, you can do all the simulation you want, in practice. You can do everything you can to make it seem like a game, but you're never going to be able to replicate what you get when you're actually in an NFL regular season game, when defenders are coming at you full speed, trying to knock you on the ground, trying to hit you, trying to disrupt you, trying to do all that. And Deshaun Watson didn't see any of that for about 700 days until yesterday. And, he looked like a guy who was, having a hard time kind of picking that up. I mean, he had a couple good moments. I think there was a 27-yard pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones that looked more like Deshaun Watson. But you have to hope if you're the Browns that, he kind of got that out of his system, that he got almost 60 reps at that speed, although he only threw about 22 times. I think he ran a handful of times. You kind of had to hope that, he picked up what happened in that game, understanding the speed and kind of getting ready for the next game. And maybe the fact that, this is the second game helps him because it's just a more normal week, instead of, having to get reinstated, go through all the things that he went through in the past week to get ready. This week, it's a much more normal week. He's got got a game already. You can watch film of, see what happened, what went better. And, he's going to have to make a jump like we saw Jacoby Brissett makes from weeks 1 to 2. If he can do that, in Cincinnati against a far tougher team than he faced in Houston, it gives the Browns a better shot to win.
Yeah, what do you think the key is for that? Obviously, I think they got to win out. I don't think 9 wins gets them anywhere near. I won't say anywhere near. 9 wins isn't going to do it, though. They have too many tiebreakers against them. I think they got to get to 10, and 10 may not guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing around with the New York Times playoff simulator, a couple times, and they have to get to about 82. Even if they win out, it's still only about an 82% chance. And those took a hit, I think, when the Ravens and Bengals both won yesterday. So they're going to need help from those teams. They're going to need those teams to kind of fall off the map. They're going to need some wild card teams to fall off the map. In addition to running the table, they're going to need the Steelers to kind of become their best friend and really, handle the Baltimore Ravens, because Pittsburgh faces Baltimore twice, including this upcoming game. So they're going to need a lot of help. It's hard to envision that happening, although, as we know in the NFL, stranger things have certainly happened. I mean, all the Browns can really do at this point is just worry about their own destiny. They can't worry about what other teams are doing, but they're going to need a lot to go their way to be dreaming of playing postseason football.
We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, a team that will, in fact, be playing for a national championship, the Ohio State Buckeyes. We'll talk college football playoff. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They found out yesterday that they will, in fact, be one of the 4 teams playing for the national championship. Buckeyes will play the Georgia Bulldogs in the Peach Bowl in the first, or the semifinals, if you will, of the college football playoff. And they will not have one of their outstanding wide receivers, Jackson Smith-Njigba, announced to Buckeye Nation that he is going to focus on rehabbing from his injury and getting ready for the NFL draft. He will not play in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia against the Georgia Bulldogs. So he's headed to the NFL. Tim, really talented wide receiver, not a surprise, and he hadn't played much this year. Ohio State still has some really good wide receivers.
Emergence of Marvin Harrison Jr. has been huge to kind of make up for the loss of Jackson Smith-Njigba. Emeka Egbuka certainly played well throughout the season. There's certainly been some contributions from, Julian Fleming and Cade Stover, but obviously not having Jackson Smith-Njigba hurts for this team. I mean, we all saw just what kind of difference maker he was in the Rose Bowl back in January. You know, there was a time, I think, even before the season when, you know, I was kind of thinking, looking at the 23 class, and, you know, there was a case to be made that he could have been the first non-quarterback taken in the entire draft. That's how good he was coming in the season. But, you know, it's unfortunate that injury that happened in Notre Dame, and he's just had one setback after another, and it's been tough to see, and it's, you know, cost him kind of a draft stock. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm curious where he'll fall kind of from a draft perspective, for an Ohio State perspective. You know, this was the guy you were hoping was going to really kind of carry this offense in as far as receivers go, and kind of take some pressure off of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, and Marvin Harrison Jr. has been really, really good, and he's kind of the next in line. Another guy that isn't going to be with the Buckeyes at the Peach Bowl in the national semifinals is their offensive coordinator. He has taken the job at Tulsa, so that's kind of interesting. Brian Wilson heading to Tulsa. Could be Brian Hartline from Glen Oak that gets bumped up.
Yeah, I'm curious who they will kind of choose to be, you know, the offensive coordinator. Obviously, this is kind of Ryan Day's offense in some ways, but, you know, obviously Kevin Wilson's played a pretty big role in the offense the last few years, kind of made sure it's kind of evolved. When he and Ryan Day both kind of got to Ohio State around the same time, that's when you kind of saw the offense evolve from what it was, you know, especially after the problems they had in the 2016 playoff against Clemson. Since that, the Buckeyes kind of modernized the offense a little bit. It's kind of more up to where, you know, some of the top offenses are now. But I would imagine, you know, based on, you know, how important Brian Hartline is to this program, you know, especially from a recruiting perspective, the players he's brought into the program, you know, the way he's been able to develop the receivers throughout the last several years. You know, he's gotten more you know, responsibility in the team. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets, you know, a chance to be the offensive coordinator. We're just gonna have to kind of wait and see where that one kind of falls. But, you know, this could be an interesting hire. You know, obviously, considering what happened against Michigan the last few years, they got to figure out, you know, a way to kind of continue to evolve the offense, because you always got to find ways to make it better. And, you know, Michigan has done a great job the last 2 years and really, you know, making what's been an explosive Ohio State offense looks semi-pedestrian.
Yeah, Kevin Wilson's done a great job, though. I mean, calling plays, don't ever take it for granted. When it goes wrong, you see how it looks. And other than that Michigan game, it was pretty good. All right, before I let you go, what are some keys? What do the Buckeyes need to do to take down the top seed, the number one, and have been for a while, the Georgia Bulldogs, who they'll meet in the semis?
Going to be tricky. I mean, the number one thing I think if you're the Ohio State defense, you can't sleep on Stetson Bennett. I know, you know, when it comes to the four quarterbacks in the playoff, he may be the least heralded, you know, maybe as far as, like, you know, especially NFL draft stocks go. But I mean, he's played well, you know, since the national championship game win against Alabama. It seems like he's taken a step forward. That offensive line is always tough. They have a stable of 3-4 running backs that they just kind of rotate in and out to keep fresh. They're going to kind of keep hammering the football. Brock Bowers is an all-world tight end. I mean, the man's a walking mismatch. And, you know, he's got top 10 NFL potential written all over him. It's unfortunate for him that he can't go into the NFL until after next season. He's got to go play one more year of college football. But there's some interesting weapons out there. I think Todd Monken, the Georgia offensive coordinator, might be one of the most unsung, you know, assistant coaches in college football because of the influence he's had on Kirby Smart and the impact he's had on that offense, getting those concepts to go well, you know, marrying the run and the pass extremely well. You know, it always seems like they have a good plan in place. And against that Georgia defense, you know, they've done an amazing job to reload that defensive front. I mean, we saw all those guys that, you know, went to the NFL, and this defense really hasn't had a drop-off. Obviously, you got some, you know, veteran players who have had an impact. Jalen Carter along the defensive line, Robert Beal at linebacker, Keely Ringo, who had the pick six in the national championship a year ago. And they filled in with some interesting players around them, including Smell London, the linebacker, and Malachi Starks, true freshman safety, who's done a very nice job. So if you're Ohio State, you know, you just like in 2014 against Alabama, you can't be afraid of that defense. You got to attack them, and you got to be willing to run the football. Even if you struggle with it, you got to at least show it and you got to keep not being afraid to go to it, to kind of show that you're willing to do it, and that you can't let Georgia get into a situation where it could just tee off on C.J. Stroud, because we know he hasn't been willing. He has had issues, with willingness to run, which is something he's going to have to fix. He's going to have to become a more willing runner, especially, with just how aggressive Georgia is, how fast they are. If you have a quarterback that can move and get yards with his feet, that could be an equalizer. We've seen that for so many years throughout college football. He's going to have to be at his best. The receivers are going to have to create separation. All in all, I think Ohio State is going to have to play its best game of the season to really beat Georgia. And when you look at this matchup, I think of the three teams in the playoff outside Georgia, Ohio State might honestly, of the other three teams, have the best chance to upset and knock off the Bulldogs.
Well, we've got a couple of weeks to talk about it. That will happen on New Year's Eve, the Buckeyes and the Georgia Bulldogs. Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Pages of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports4CLE.